Your guide to growing eggplant. Also known as aubergine, this purple fruit is typically used as a veggie in cooking. It's often a staple in vegetarian and vegan dishes, most likely because it's quite nutrient-dense. That means it's got a lot of great vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber with few calories. You have a few different eggplant options, depending on the size, shape, and color you're after. American eggplant. This variety is the biggest and fattest of the bunch. It has a meaty texture and is best suited for slicing and grilling. Italian eggplant. This one is a bit smaller than the American variety and has a sweeter flavor. Japanese eggplant. This variety is much longer and slimmer compared to the others. It's good for cutting and also makes a great addition to a stir-fry. Rosa Bianca eggplant. This variety has purple, pink, and white markings. They are less bitter than the other darker purple varieties and have fewer seeds. Indian eggplant. This type has more of a round, squat shape. Thai eggplant. They're quite small and round and are either green, purple, or white. They tend to be more bitter than the other varieties. With Thai eggplant, you have to remove their seeds before cooking. White eggplant. There is no real flavor difference compared to its purple family members, but the color of this variety is quite the eye-catcher. Keep in mind that the ideal soil temperature for germination is between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 26.6 to 32.2 degrees Celsius. Your plants won't germinate in cool soil, which is anything below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius. Here's how to start your seeds. Step 1. Start with seedlings indoors about 8 to 10 weeks before you plan to transplant them. Step 2. Before seeding, you'll want to work either a complete fertilizer or compost into the first 6 inches, 15.2 centimeters of your soil. Step 3. Sow your seeds a quarter to a half-inch deep, then cover them lightly with soil. Step 4. As soon as your seedlings have emerged, give them plenty of light. Either sit them on a windowsill or keep them under fluorescent light at about 16 hours a day. Step 5. If you've started your seeds outside, space them 24 to 36 inches, 61 to 91 centimeters apart. Note: if they've been grown in small pots, you may need to transplant your seedlings into bigger containers first. This would happen when they have about 3 pairs of leaves. In this section, we'll cover everything you need to know about watering your eggplants, the ideal growing conditions, and the benefits of mulching. We'll also talk transplanting, companion planting, and which growing structures you can use. Watering. This crop will need about 1 to 2 inches of water per week, but it's better to thoroughly soak the soil once rather than doing shorter, more frequent watering. That way, their roots will have to develop to reach all the moisture and won't become shallow. They'll also need full sun for their growth process. Eggplant can tolerate high temperatures, up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius, but they will stop their growth when temperatures fall below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius. Cooler temperatures will cause them to grow more leaves and less fruit, while frost will kill your plants completely. You'll want to avoid planting in a spot where tomatoes, peppers, or potatoes were grown the year before. These crops are relatives of eggplant, so if you don't practice crop rotation, it increases the risk for diseases. Eggplant is a heavy feeder, but you'll want to avoid using a nitrogen-rich fertilizer. Though it may cause your plant's leaves to thrive, the fruit itself won't develop as well as it should. Organic mulches will help keep your soil moist and will also control weeds, but you won't want to apply it until your soil has warmed up to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 23.8 degrees Celsius. When it comes to different types of mulch, you can use wood chips, grass clippings, straw, or hay. After transplanting, apply a quarter cup of a starter solution around your eggplants. To make this solution, simply dissolve 2 tablespoons of a complete fertilizer into 1 gallon of water. Transplanting best practices. Harden off your eggplants by first lowering their water and temperature levels. Then you can put your seedling containers outside for a few hours, starting about a week before transplanting. At first, you'll want to keep them sheltered from harsh winds and full sun. Make sure you wait until all danger of frost has passed and your soil has warmed up to at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees Celsius, before you plant them into your garden. Eggplant is also best transplanted when it has 6 to 9 true leaves and a well-developed root system. At that point, they should be at least 5 to 8 inches, 12.7 to 20.3 centimeters tall. While transplanting, you'll want to dig a hole in the soil that's big enough to accommodate the whole root ball, the clump of roots and soil at the bottom of your plant. Then you can plant them about 18 to 24 inches, 46 to 61 centimeters apart, in rows that are 20 to 30 inches, 51 to 76 centimeters apart. Companion plants, do's and don'ts. Do's: beans, peas, peppers, potatoes, amaranth, spinach, and thyme can all be planted with eggplant. As well, marigolds will help repel any nematodes that might be in the ground. Don'ts: fennel shouldn't be planted with your eggplant because it prevents them from growing. Growing structure options. Containers. Generally, all eggplant varieties can be grown in containers, but small fruit or dwarf varieties will thrive here the most, since they naturally don't need as much space. Just make sure your containers have holes in the bottom to ensure good water drainage. Raised beds. These structures have good drainage, and your soil will warm up faster than in an open field. You'll also have the ability to use whatever soil works best for you, meaning you're not reliant on what's already in your garden. A nice added bonus is that raised beds make for a more comfortable gardening experience, since you don't have to bend or kneel too much. Open field. If you have enough space, you can plant directly into the ground. With this crop in particular, it's very important that your soil is well warmed before setting any transplants or seeds into the ground. Note: we recommend staking, especially when your plant grows a lot of fruits. It's an additional support to help keep your eggplant nice and steady, and it also helps it to grow more vertically, which keeps their sensitive fruits and leaves off the ground. Potential pests. Aphids. These tiny pests come in a variety of colors: green, black, red, light orange, or yellow, and mainly feed on the undersides of leaves and stems. What they're actually feeding on is the sap in plants, which ends up causing the plants damage. Aphids also leave behind a sticky substance called honeydew, and they are a pest that's known to spread diseases. Aphids can be tolerated by most plants when their numbers are low, but if there's a lot of aphids, they can stunt a plant's growth and cause a plant's leaves to turn yellow and fall off. Here's what to do. For the most part, plants can handle mild aphid infestations. But if they're found, a strong jet of water from a garden hose will wash them off the plants. Spraying plants with water should be done early in the morning so that the plants can dry off during the day. Sticky traps, neem oil, insecticidal soaps, and horticultural oils are also effective against aphids. Just be sure to follow the application instructions on the packaging. Oftentimes, you can also get rid of aphids by wiping or spraying the leaves with a mild solution of water and a few drops of dish soap. One variation includes adding a pinch of cayenne pepper. Soapy water should be reapplied every 2 to 3 days for about 2 weeks. As well, you can try to attract beneficial insects like lady beetles, hoverflies, and lacewings, all of which are important aphid predators. Make sure to check all transplants for aphids before planting. And keep in mind that aphids aren't very mobile, so it's not uncommon to find one heavily affected plant surrounded by plants that are fine. If this is the case, simply remove and destroy the infected plant. Colorado potato beetle. They feed on the leaves of plants and cause lots of holes to appear as a result. Adult beetles are black and yellow striped, while their larvae are bright red with black heads. Here's what to do. Handpick the beetles and their larvae off any infested plants. Cutworms. These are gray worms that curl their bodies around the stem of a plant and feed on it, which causes the plant to be cut off just above the soil surface. When their numbers are high, they can cause severe damage to the garden by causing plants to wilt and die off. Cutworms feed at night and hide in plant debris during the day, and they prey more on new transplants, seedlings, or young plants since their stems are more tender. There are a number of different types, but the most common are red-backed, dark-sided, and dingy cutworms. Here's what to do. Hand-pick any cutworms from the plants after dark, when they're most active. Also, keep a 3 to 4 foot buffer of dry soil along the edge of the garden to make it unattractive to cutworms. As well, remove plant residue to help reduce egg-laying sites, and get rid of weeds which can host young cutworm larvae. Be sure to till the garden before planting, which helps to expose and kill any larvae that might be present. Also, use compost instead of green manure, since manure might encourage egg laying. As well, try placing aluminum foil or cardboard collars around the plants to create a barrier, which will stop cutworm larvae from feeding. Simply place the collars around the plants so that one end is pushed a few inches into the soil and the other end is several inches above the ground. Adding a layer of mulch will also help to prevent any cutworms from reaching the soil surface, and natural predators like wasps and ground beetles also help to control cutworm infestations. Finally, try spreading diatomaceous earth, essentially a soft powder made from the bones of tiny aquatic creatures, around the plant's base. This creates a sharp barrier that will keep cutworms out. Flea beetles. Small beetles that are either black, a blue color, bronze, gray, or sometimes striped. Flea beetles jump when they're disturbed, and they also shimmer in the light. Flea beetles feed on leaves and seedlings, and the damage from their feeding habits can stunt a plant's growth, reduce yields, spread diseases, or kill seedlings off entirely. Young plants are especially vulnerable, while older plants can survive an infestation much better. Here's what to do. Use a lightweight floating row cover at the beginning of the season to prevent flea beetles from becoming an issue. There's also a homemade spray that uses 2 cups of rubbing alcohol, 5 cups of water, and 1 tablespoon of liquid soap that can work to repel these bugs. Test out this mixture on a single leaf first. Let it sit overnight, then spray the rest of the plant if there aren't any side effects. Dusting plants with plain talcum powder can also help, as well as using white sticky traps to capture these pests as they jump. As well, weeds attract and shelter flea beetles, so it's important to keep weed growth under control. Insecticides might help for about a week, but they'll need to be reapplied, and adding a layer of mulch is yet another option. Be sure to practice crop rotation and plant seeds early to give them lots of time to establish themselves before the beetles become a problem. Mature plants are less susceptible to damage, so make sure to protect more vulnerable seedlings. Potential diseases and their solutions. Leaf blight. This disease starts with a small number of circular reddish-purple spots that appear on the leaves of an affected plant. Spots will eventually grow to V-shaped lesions that are light brown towards the middle and dark brown on the edges. The whole leaf may turn brown, and in severe cases, these lesions then cause the leaves of affected plants to curl up and die. Here's what to do. Plant disease-free seeds. Practice crop rotation. And avoid planting in a spot where potatoes, peppers, or tomatoes have just grown. It also helps to plant in light, well-drained soil in a spot that gets all-day sun and good air circulation. As well, control the growth of weeds, since they reduce air circulation and increase drying time for leaves. The longer the leaves are wet, the more prone they are to disease. Finally, be sure to remove any infected leaves after harvest, which can help control diseases. Leaf spot. Circular, deep purple spots will first appear on the upper leaves. These spots then grow, and the spots' centers turn grayish to white on older leaves and light brown on young leaves. These spots will also have a defined reddish purple to rusty brown border, and as the spots grow, those spots dry out. The stems of affected plants will also wilt, and severe infections can become an entry point for other rotting diseases. Here's what to do. Plant disease-free seeds when possible. Also, avoid long leaf wetness by watering in the morning, avoiding overhead watering, and by spacing plants properly. It helps to avoid working in the garden when plants are wet, since leaf spot is mainly spread by splashing water. As well, it's important to practice crop rotation. If leaf spot is present, remove any infected plants to prevent the disease from spreading. Sun scald. This disease is caused by hot, dry weather when eggplant fruits are exposed to direct sunlight. Their exposed areas will overheat, dry out, and won't color evenly. Here's what to do. It's super important to maintain good soil moisture during any hot and dry periods. As well, when the weather is hot and dry, good leaf coverage can help to prevent the problem. Verticulum wilt. A disease causing the yellowing and wilting of lower leaves. Also, V-shaped brown lesions will appear, and the plant's roots and stems will also turn brown. Infected leaves wilt, dry out, and eventually die, while the stems of plants might also turn black near the soil line. In general, verticulum wilt can cause the wilting, stunting, or even the death of plants entirely. The disease is typically spread between plants when infected plant material is physically moved from one spot to another. Here's what to do. Plant high-quality disease-free seeds and avoid planting in areas that were previously infected with verticulum wilt. It's also important to practice crop rotation with non-vulnerable plants. In general, a 3-year crop rotation is a good place to start. As well, make sure plants have enough space in between, since air circulation and ventilation is very important for avoiding disease. Do not over-fertilize or over-water plants. And when watering is done, it's best to do so in the morning to give plants time to dry off during the day. Also, sterilize any containers before use. When there are plants infected with verticulum wilt, be sure to remove and destroy the plants, and also destroy the surrounding soil. It's also important to control weeds around the crops. Water crops regularly, and when possible, provide crops with some afternoon shade. The verticulum wilt fungus can also be rid from the soil by using the solarization process. Simply cover the soil with a tarp, which will heat up the top 6 inches, 15 centimeters of soil, enough to kill the fungus. Harvesting. Eggplants can be harvested once their fruit is about the third of its full size. Though you can break the fruit off from its stem, it's much better to cut it. This will avoid causing damage to the rest of your plant. Keep in mind that when you harvest early, it can prevent the fruit from developing too many seeds and a thick skin, which is what you want to avoid. Storing. Mature eggplant can be stored for up to 7 days in temperatures between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 12.7 degrees Celsius. Storing best in cool places, outside of the fridge. They can also be frozen, but canning or drying them typically won't work.